Talk Show.
Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we kick off a retrospective we're calling Zombie Origins, starting with White Zombie from 1932. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, creator of the Alex Van Helsing novels. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars and co-creator of the comic Psycom from Tokyopop and Clockworks from Humanoids. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
And also in Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards, writer for Rockabilly Online and creator and writer for the long-running comic Halloween Man. Say hello, Drew.
Good evening.
Good evening. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Ciao, bello.
Ciao, Bella. Okay, according to Wikipedia, White Zombie, so exciting to actually get a chance to see this. White Zombie is a 1932 American pre-code horror film directed and independently produced by Victor and Edward Halpern and based on The Magic Island by William Seabrook. It tells the story of a young woman's transformation into a zombie at the hands of an evil voodoo master played by Bela Lugosi. While the film made a substantial financial profit, which to me is really all that matters if you're an independent filmmaker, as an independent feature, it proved to be less popular than other films of the time. It is considered the first feature-length zombie film. And I should point out that even though the reviews at the time were not very kind, since then they've gotten better. So let's talk about it. What an unusual movie to kick off this new retrospective. So let's get our opening thoughts. Let's go Drew, Julia, Tony, and then I'll go. So, Mr. Drew, I think you may have even chosen this movie. What is up with White Zombie?
I love this movie. It's got so much I like about pre-code horror. It's very atmospheric, almost
when
like
you say pre-code, lay it out for the listener. What
the pre-Hays Code, before there was a lot of morality restrictions placed on films, so that you could get away with a lot of sexual implications and implications of violence. And the movies typically made before the code are a lot more insane. They're a lot like the best example, and I hope we get to do this movie one day, is Mask of Fu Manchu, which is another pre-code horror film that just basically has everything. They couldn't have made that movie after the code. This movie has a lot of like tawdry sexual undertones, which I really like, and it's got a I love Bela Lugosi, and this is one of my favorite Bela Lugosi performances. I think he looks great. Like, if I had to pick a Bela Lugosi character to dress up as for Halloween, this would probably be it. He's got the great hypnotic eyes. This is just such a great looking movie. I do often wonder, like, this is a movie that is very stagey in its acting style, so I do a lot of times when I try to share this movie with people, like, it doesn't translate as well to some people who aren't already fans of movies from the 30s, but yeah. I freaking love this movie, and this is. You say it's a peculiar movie to start out this retrospective with. I say this is the only movie we could have started with.
Excellent. Julia, well, and by the way, before we go on, I just wanted to mention, yes, we should talk a little bit more about places where it violated what would be the code. The Hays Code, the Motion Picture Production Code, comes around literally like 2 years after this movie comes out. So, whereas in this movie you can have Madge Bellamy walking around in her underwear,
Oh yeah, man, that was one thing I actually was wondering. Like, I was like, this has to be pre-code. That's pretty racy for a lot of things. Like, what she's wearing is like pretty racy even for kind of now in a lot of ways. Yeah. Certainly then.
She's got like, a bare midriff. She's wearing the bra and the sort of shorty shorts. And a veil, and she hasn't put on the dress yet, and she's just walking around.
But like stockings, heels, the whole, like she's in her lingerie, like walking around, which had to be scandalous for the 30s. Like, it again, it reiterates that kind of like horror movies have always kind of had that like sexiness meets scary. It's been in the DNA of horror movies for a really long time.
Although I should point out, you could get away with a lot because, like Jane in Tarzan, there was nudity. I mean, Jane swam naked, and they didn't hide that. That was also 1932. And basically, another way to put it, Tony, is this is the point where the morality people in Hollywood said, "All right, enough. We've
right."
You people
I was thinking that was one of the first things I was like, man, this has to be pre-code. Like, you're just standing there, like, because stuff are not too far from here. I guess what you said, 2 years. You aren't going to see that. You'll get more hints of it, and it becomes more and more like it creeps back in the 50s and 60s. Here and there, you'll get more and more movies like kind of, hey, look,
the
teenagers
code ruled until 1968. I mean, it's a long time for that's a lifetime. 26 years it goes on. So So anyway, Julia, what do you think of White Zombie?
I think that it's really charming. I think there's a lot of neat things about it. I was actually surprised. I wouldn't say I'm a non-fan of the 30s movies. I just really don't know. I'm kind of new to 30s movies. There's only a couple I've seen. And so for me, it's kind of like, oh, this isn't what I would have expected. Like, there was a lot of kind of surprising things. I definitely love to see as well. I love guys early in the film, and it's Bela Lugosi. Like, there's no question. If somebody were to show you, I've seen on TV where they'll do, like, whose lips are these or whatever, and you get their son that you just know. His eyes are so distinctive, and he's just a really interesting actor. He's, it's not a huge part in this film like he is in some others. Maybe it's the same. I don't know, but it felt like there was less of him here, but he's certainly memorable. His name in this movie is what is it? Murder. What's his last name?
Legendary.
Murder Legendary, which I think is
He is so evil. His name is Murder. Isn't that great?
Murder Legendary.
Yeah.
That sounds like the best film studio that ever was. I mean, it could be called Murder Legendary.
Yep. So, I enjoyed it.
Excellent. Tony, you said a little bit about the code, but lay it on us. I mean, you were watching this movie. What did you think?
I like the movie a lot. I think it's a movie that actually, this is the kind of movie that you could take and remake and really lay into a bunch. There's a lot of themes here, but because it's kind of a certain era, a lot of it kind of just flows. I mean, it's like just over an hour, But you could take this theme. I mean, we already live in a world where there's like Serpent and the Rainbow and such like that. But you could take this and deal with like so many things in this movie. I mean, we'll probably get into it as we talk, but like I would love to see like you could do so much and it could go in so many different ways. Like I'd like to see somebody really handle this just a really awesome remake of this. And as much as I love the movie itself,
Tobe Hooper tried to remake this in 2009, even though the film is actually in the public domain. There were certain aspects of it, and I don't know the specifics. I kind of wonder if it's the likeness of Lugosi, but they didn't end up, going past the scripting stage because of there was even though the movie's public domain, there is stuff that they couldn't use from this movie, which is strange because Nadja, which is a 90s sort of postmodern vampire movie, actually uses Lugosi in this movie to quote-unquote play Dracula. And,
but also, who cares? I mean, so
Nadja's awesome, by the way.
Have what's that, Tony? Sorry.
I said Nadja's awesome. That's one of my favorite vampire films.
Huh. I mean, I was just thinking, I'm sorry, Tony, I interrupted you. Really quickly, you could have, if Tobe Hooper wants to remake this, then screw Lugosi. Have Hugh Laurie play the character. Put Hugh Laurie in Van Dyke. I'm just picking somebody out of the air. But I mean, it doesn't matter. Lugosi is amazing here, but you can choose not to have Lugosi, a guy doing Lugosi, and you still have a heck of a lot of cool stuff.
You could have a ton.
Sort of went off. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you could have a ton of there's so many bits that are cool, and it just kind of flows, and it has its own, classic films of this era have just a way that they do things, and I don't think simplistic is the word. That's boiling it down way too much, because there's a lot of just really cool stuff and really cool subtext. But in general, it tends to be, there's not as much that people delve into. And I would like to see a movie, like a remake, that goes into, because you've got such great bits, murder is he runs the town. He runs the island. And they show him when he's got all of the important people basically in thrall. And nobody likes to admit that, but there's, hey, look, it's more white people coming to run these plantations. The subjugation of all the plantation workers in general, and all of this stuff. Colonialism, just all the possession of a woman, and who's after her, and all that stuff. You could dive even deeper and make it really interesting. You don't have to make it dark, but you could deal with a lot more of those themes. And I think that would be really interesting. As it stands, though, the movie's great, and it's got one of the best villains. He's just awesome.
I think what strikes me, first of all, this movie, if you're thinking of watching it, if you're a listener and you haven't watched it yet, this movie is short. It's an hour long, give or take a few minutes. And so basically, you can sit down and watch this. In the time it takes to watch, an episode of Scandal, you can watch White Zombie and, commercials. But, whatever. It goes very, very fast, and before you know it. And that's true of a lot of the films of this era, that feature films weren't set in stone as what they currently are, which I think is at least 78 minutes. At the time, you could have this movie that's just a little bit over an hour, and it's considered a feature.
This movie could have been so much longer if there was so much that they could have done. I think it was Drew that was saying that you could really just stretch it out and have more, develop the story a lot more.
Well, Tony was saying, there's a lot of places where you could have conversations about a lot of different things that happen here, and scenes between different characters, but they're moving fast. In this one, they are really moving. My feeling about it is that it feels very when it came out, people regarded this as being fairly antiquated. In 1932, they thought, this feels very backwards. The writing seems very stilted. It's not in keeping with our modern sensibility. Because remember, this is 1 year after Dracula. Dracula was moved all the way to a fairly modern time when Sherlock Holmes would come around. Within about a decade of this, Sherlock was moved into the 40s. But this movie feels like God knows when in the past, and that was very out of step with the way films were going at the time. But now, in 2016, it's fabulous because it feels like a complete fairy tale. You don't know precisely when all of this is happening, other than that clearly the colonialism is happening, and the British West Indies and the sugar trade and all that stuff is a thing. But that becomes this sort of, it's another world. It's completely another world. And that's why I told you.
The interesting thing about that is it does have that same non-time period that a lot of the Universal horror films have. And we'd even discussed this earlier on the phone. This is in many ways like the bastard child of Universal horror, because a lot of the sets in this movie are repurposed sets from Frankenstein and Dracula. Jack Pierce, Universal's makeup wizard, did the makeup for this movie. And, the zombies, they're not what we think of, when you think of zombies on The Walking Dead, but they're very striking. They're very creepy. You wouldn't want to run into them in a dark alley.
We haven't actually talked. So we should talk about that. Let's get right into. We said this is the first feature-length zombie movie. So what does that mean exactly? I mean, what are zombies in White Zombie? Drew, I don't
even think White Zombie really has like a hard, fast rule on what zombies are in White Zombie, because, there's, they try to go into like the almost pseudo-scientific side where it's like, oh, these are just people in a trance. But then there's obviously, if you go off some of the scenes, there's something supernatural going on. And also later on, they shoot at several of the zombies and they just keep right on coming.
Yeah.
So like the lore here is nebulous, but at the same time, it is a lot closer to what the actual folklore of what zombies are in Haiti than anything George Romero ever did.
Which is to say, legendarily, a witch doctor in particular has the ability to bring a deceased person back from the dead as a slave, basically. That's they to do drudge work. So it's a slave thing. Now here's a question: did the concept of zombies as essentially forever slaves, not allowed to rest in peace, brought back, did that exist before colonial slavery in the West Indies? In other words, is it a subtle critique of the enslavement of a people, or are they completely unrelated to one another? We may not. That's a tough question to just invent right off the cuff. So there may not be any.
Well, that is good. A long time ago, I'd read a lot about this kind of stuff, and since it's been so many years that I've forgotten a lot of it. But I think there were roots in that. But then I want to say that the kind of like voodoo style stuff was in there and then propagated towards that, if I remember correctly. Like, hey, we're gonna
the powerlessness of slavery.
Yeah, so like, hey, I can use my power to do this, but a lot of it was like, hey, I can bring people back from the dead. I'm an important person here, that kind of thing.
Right.
But then turn towards life on plantation, colonial plantation land. It morphed as far as I remember. But again, this has been a while. So
in many ways, this is scarier than our pop cultural conception of a zombie, because it's this sort of eternal slave. It's you've lost your soul, you've lost your will. It's funny, we talked about the loss of a soul a lot last week on Bubba Hotep. Well, this is chicken soup for the soulless. Like you were drug out of your grave and forced to work for Bela Lugosi in his, when his normal human workers go home, he's got this workforce that will just never stop. And I think, at the point where we're at is in society, that's very nightmarish to me. The idea that, all that matters is your productivity, and your productivity doesn't stop till you die.
Yeah.
And then beyond.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, people have thought about that a lot. This notion that, you can see notions here of things like corporate socialism, where the company is going to provide nutrition and the company is going to provide health care, so the worker can dedicate his entire body and life to serving the company. You can see symbolism of that in the notion that here, you have become a nothing except for a moving body that serves a particular
I've never heard anyone say that the corporation giving you stuff was to create slaves.
Oh, you haven't worked in the games industry.
I think you're absolutely right. This is something that I talk a lot about with my friends when we
crunch food is. Where it's like, hey, you got food. You don't need to leave. You can eat dinner right here.
Oh no. Also to that point, if you in some places, if you go, well, they're working me overtime, why aren't I getting overtime? And they'll say, well, did you get crunch food? And you go, yeah. Like, well, that's compensation. That counts as compensation.
I can talk to you about that offline, but that sure isn't compensation.
It may be good.
Yeah.
No, but this is Tony's pointing out the inescapable nature of it. I'm just saying that there's a notion of that, is that you're here working for this company and we intend you to never leave, and we're going to give you stuff that will make it both ostensibly attractive, but also such that really you can't leave.
I didn't see it at all that way, because I know, and I mean, you know, that there are plenty of places that don't nourish their workers at all, and they still expect them to be slaves. I mean, look at like sweatshops and whatever.
Well,
you know, there's plenty. I mean, Walmart. I don't know.
That's my whole thing. The metaphor of the zombie can be applied to all different kinds of situations. It can be applied to white collar, to blue collar, to below that. You know, like this is a very, very, very rife metaphor here that we don't see. Like the last zombie movie I think that I saw that really employed this was Fido, which is an excellent zombie movie from about a decade ago, which sort of combined these kind of zombies with Romero zombies into one thing.
Well, those questions we were just talking about are thinking about zombies in terms of symbolism of labor. You know, we get that. But there's the other thing that, and Fido may bring that in, yes, you know, that there's also, one thing that I noticed is that by removing the zombie myth from voodoo and the West Indies, you also get rid of an uncomfortable level of systemized racism that you have in these other stories. And I don't mean the characters per se are racist. They are part of, because they're too removed from any question of it to even contemplate whether
I think it's pretty safe to say that Bela Lugosi's character is at least part of a racist system.
And even his zombies are white. That's the interesting thing.
It's the title of the movie.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. But I mean, all of his zombies, because he has a special little crew of working zombies who are all made up of of people that he hated, and then when they died or he murdered them or whatever.
I don't know that they died. I thought maybe I didn't pay close enough attention to the ending, but I thought that because the female comes back, that actually they're not dead at all. They're just all.
Well, that's what the doctor said.
I like that. I like that theory.
That's nebulous. But I think that's what they say. But I think that's nebulous because, again, they shoot some of those zombies and they keep right on coming.
I think that those people are alive until they get shot. Like, in other words, I think that they are murdering people after drugging them.
Yeah,
just
like he keeps walking. I mean, but you know, it's.
Yeah.
I
think it's more. It's more of a like somebody's on PCP.
Yeah,
like
that
could be a way of looking at it. But I mean, there's definitely, you know, the way Lugosi carries himself. Like, there's definitely a ritualistic black magic thing going on here, and he seems to believe it. So
that's the only reason that it's in Haiti, because there aren't any black people except for the driver at the beginning. There's no black people in this movie, I don't think. Well, very few.
But
it has to be in Haiti because of the black magic, according to them.
Well, but I want to talk about Lugosi actually just in a second. But I mean, this when I'm talking about racism, what I'm talking about is this movie and others like it get a lot of mileage out of how romantic it is. And look, they're not wrong. It's really attractive and real, you know, about the romance of being somebody who is lucky enough to live on a really, really well-appointed estate in a slave society, if you're not a slave. Because these guys are living in these beautiful plantations. There's beautiful trees. There's the sound of beach, the ocean all the time. There's servants. There's this, presumably, awesome cocktails. It's great, and the thing is, it's so great that it begs you not to ask, well, how is all of this working? Well, all of this is working on slave labor. That's how it works.
Yep.
But now we're so far away from it that it's a fantasy in a sense. It's like it's a whole other world, so that we can kind of even forget. I love to watch it, but at the same time, I'm aware that there's exploitation going on, even by these ostensibly very good people, who, let's be honest, they would never stop to think about the exploitation of their lives, and because that would be very difficult and probably counter historical. Anyway, there's probably a lot more we could say about that, but let's talk about Lugosi, because Lugosi, as how did you say it? Murder Legendary.
Murder Legendary.
His first name is Murder. His last name is Legendary. And that's fabulous. So, yeah. I've listened to myself talk enough. Joy or Tony, would you like to take a crack at describing what the heck is up with Bela Lugosi here?
Well, I like him. I mean, he's definitely in black magic. It's, again, here's a guy. Strangely enough, though, we talked about the racial politics of it. Well, this is a white guy, who's made his way as a black magician, who doesn't dress like you would maybe have a shaman or a witch doctor at all. He's definitely like more magician.
He dresses like Dr. Strange in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's funny, he looks more like Stoker's Dracula in this movie than he does in Dracula.
This is very true.
That's for sure, yeah.
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 And he, I just love the way, and this is the guy who's actually more or less running the show. He's got the island, he's got it figured out, I get this.
He's also working them. I mean, he invites. Yeah. So this one guy Beaumont Lugosi runs the sugar mill. The guy Beaumont runs a sugar plantation. He brings Beaumont over for cocktails and says, "Listen, I got a lot of zombies here. You could really use these guys. They don't complain about hours. I could." So he's got besides his sugar mill, he's got a second business running.
Yeah.
Where he makes workers for people. That's astonishing. I mean, that's so, and there's so much more that you can do with this. Again, movie's
we don't even know. He could also be the witch doctor pimp for all we know.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Well, he's essentially kind of doing that now, isn't he?
There you go.
Oh my God.
But he's got. But I like the part too because he comes up and he's like, are you really running a show? Well, look here. See these guys. These are all some of the most important people on the island. They're my zombies. That's awesome. Like I said, there's so much. I wouldn't say they gloss over it, but there's so much going on where you're just like, wait, but how does he get the most important people? How do you meet? What's going on? And again, they deal with I still think it's more of even though he's got his own things that look black magic. I think it's definitely closer to the reality of Serpent and the Rainbow, which it's come to light. That's how zombies are made. It's a drug, and some people act more zombie-like because they were, some people did die, suffocated. Other people had colossal brain damage from being left in the ground. Yeah. There's all realms of what happens after you, get put under by this stuff that makes you basically, and that's why the doctor's there too. The doctor's
the scariest scene in the whole movie is, he slips Beaumont the zombie potion, and he doesn't give him a lot. He just gives him a little, so he's slowly turning into a zombie.
Even though this movie is only an hour long, I feel like half an hour of it spent with just that guy just being suffering slowly.
It's horrible though. He's and Bela Lugosi's sitting there making his little voodoo doll, and he reaches over and tries to touch his hand, and Lugosi just sort of bats his hand away. It is one of the best scenes of a villain who's gotten comeuppance on somebody he doesn't like that I have ever
evil.
seen.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is modern level evil. Because this is way worse than anything Dracula ever did. This guy is really dark and evil, and the level of cruelty to this guy Beaumont is just out of keeping with what we expect from the 1930s, which is, of course, bizarre because we should know that anybody making a movie in the 1930s is making within living memory of World War I. But we imagine that levels of cruelty like this only came around, later. It's pretty dark. I mean, I love
I love his whole line. He's like, it's a pity you cannot no longer speak because you're the first person I've ever done this to that knows what's happening to them. Yeah, and I love that. When I talk about this is a type of villain we don't see much he's acutely aware that he's bad. But he doesn't really. He's totally secure in his badness. There's no attempt to sort of justify it. They don't even really give him a backstory. He's just sort of on this island, a guy from Romania who's somehow become top dog witch doctor, and he's got his castle full of zombies and his squad of screeching vultures that follow him around. And there's no explanation ever given for any of those.
That bird was horrible. I swear, I kept forgetting. It was I'd hear this horrible blood-curdling scream, and I'd be like, oh, my God, what's happening? And Jason would be like, it's the bird, remember? And I was like, oh, yeah, fucking bird, oh, my God.
I was hanging out with, I had my cat, and he's on my lap, and he hears that, and he's just like, what the hell, man?
Yeah.
Why would anything make that noise? He just starts looking around. He's jump down. He's like, why? Why is that a sound coming from anything in the world?
The funny thing about that is that the director actually hated talkies, which is why there is, sparse dialogue and sparse sound in this movie. But the funny thing about that is when they do have piercing sounds like that vulture, it is really unnerving.
Yeah, it is.
No, do you think it really makes that noise, or do you think that was actually women screaming and they just put it on the bird?
I have no idea, but it works.
I've never heard a vulture that sounds like
animal that makes that noise.
I have to tell you, a howler monkey makes a very similar and weird.
No, but a howler monkey makes a weird noise, but it's not a terrifying noise.
It's true.
Terrifying.
If it was attacking you, it would be a terrifying noise.
What?
If you're attacked by a howler monkey and it makes that noise, you're terrified.
Well, that's true, but the bird doesn't have to attack you to terrify you. It just has to be sitting outside your window.
Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine if you did have a whole bunch of birds, if the birds, instead of being crows, were those things, and they were all screaming. Oh, my God, that's a horror movie.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Forget a raven. Yeah. That thing is way more terrifying.
Yeah.
Plus, it's huge.
So before you leave, I know you want to move on, but before you leave Bela Lugosi, I think it's interesting that he did it for peanuts. I mean, he did it for hundreds of dollars, and then his whole rest of his life he regretted it or he has regretted. No, does he? This is a stupid question, but Bela Lugosi, yeah, he's dead. I was it's probably died a long time ago.
Like Val has said, Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
Of course.
I was hoping someone did that.
Yeah, but anyway, so apparently his whole life he regretted not having taken a percentage of the movie. It's just
sure, I have no doubt. Yeah. I wanted to mention his powers, just to list them. If you imagine a page of the official handbook of the Marvel Universe with murder legendary there in the corner, his powers are business acumen, a la Lex Luthor, but also he can do voodoo dolls, so he can make a voodoo doll of you out of wax and send mental commands at you that cause you to do things. He can arrest people in their place with his hypnotic eyes. And whenever he wants to do a set of commands, he can apparently send commands your way, which he signals to us by clenching his hands.
Yeah, the famous hand gesture, which they lampooned in Tim Burton's Ed Wood.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. Yes. Yeah, and so...
You must be double-jointed, and you must be Hungarian.
I mean, he's like Dr. Doom in this way, that he's got both science and black magic, on his side, and he can actually.
Man, you need to find a way to time travel back in time so Bela Lugosi can play Dr. Doom.
Oh yeah.
Oh man. That would be amazing.
Great idea. Oh man.
I'll get on that.
Yeah, get right on that time travel thing. The first thing we'll do is fix all the Fantastic Four movies. Right.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have
All
big
right,
plans.
guys.
Well, you know what, though? We just finished watching, and I'm not going to spoil it, but we just finished watching 11/22/63, and you might be better off just trying to fix the movies, the superhero movies, instead of doing something big, because it might not work out so great if you try to do the big things.
Yeah.
Bela Lugosi is Victor Von Doom.
Except for the Bela Lugosi would never wear a metal mask. That's the main problem.
If I have time travel, we can work past that. All right.
He's willing to wear a Van Dyke beard. I think he'd be willing to wear a mask.
But that beard is really pretty swell, honestly.
He's looking good. Like this is it's funny.
He seems young.
I love Ed Wood as a movie, but I hate the emphasis that it's put on the latter half of Lugosi's career, because this is Lugosi, young or youngish Lugosi is really cool on screen. He's very suave. He's got great screen presence. Like he completely owns any scene he's ever in. And I feel like retroactively, people have kind of oh, Lugosi, he wasn't as good as Karloff. And it's like, Lugosi was every bit as good as Karloff. And this is a giant...
looks pretty... Oh, I'm sorry.
Huh? No.
I was going to say that he looks pretty damn good for 50, which he is here. He is 50 years old. He looks about 35. He looks fantastic. So... Yeah, we're so accustomed to the ravages of time for him, but we're thinking of him in the 50s, where he's like 70, where he's past 70 and still.
This is extremely old for the 20th century.
Absolutely, yeah, no, yeah. So, yeah, you're right. You're right. We've become so accustomed to that movie version. Not that it's untrue, but you kind of accept the whole world of Bela Lugosi as
Lugosi was a sex symbol because of Dracula, and people forget that, and like I said, he's looking really cool, and I like my favorite Lugosi role is actually Igor, which is a role with completely without vanity. It's
right.
not like it's not like this. It's not like Dracula. Like he's completely disappeared under all that makeup, but like. Any goth kid worth his salt would want to look as cool as Bela Lugosi in this movie.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. He's a fantastic goth hero, and I'm surprised that this look with the pretty swell, collarless suit and the beard never really took off as a look for goth kids. But that's just not the way it went. Yes. So the plot, I should say, because we haven't really talked about it, we've just talked about the world, but the plot involves basically a young couple that have come to the West Indies and have immediately fallen into a very suspicious friendship with a fellow named Beaumont. And the reason why, he says he wants to hire the husband to do some work for him, but actually, as an agent of a bank, but actually what he wants is to get that girl because, she's in theory, I guess, the most beautiful girl on the island.
Well, she appears to be the only girl on the island.
She
is really cute, though. I saw her and I was like, she's so adorable. She looks like Betty Boop or something.
And she does. Yeah, she has a little...
She has. I know Drew's all about the pinups. She has a very pin-up-y style to her. She's not but she's
almost
she's very cute.
What we think of as pinup. She's very Gibson girl, flapper, like a few years off short of the flapper era. But yeah, you're absolutely right. She's got big doe eyes and Betty Boop lips, and she's cute.
Yeah, she does. She looks like a cartoon version of that sort of actress. Interestingly enough, she came from, her name is Madge Bellamy. She was born in Hillsborough, Texas.
Hillsborough, Texas. I would not have seen that.
Grew up in San Antonio, and her dad was a professor at A&M.
No,
and she later moved.
I will not. I will try not to have less respect for her because of that.
She moved here, though. She moved to Denver. So
I only say this because I was Longhorn, not because I have all the respect for A&M. My sister went there, but having grown up as a Longhorn, or been a Longhorn during a time when that was a very serious rivalry, which is not so much anymore, I have to say that.
Well, that much of a rivalry?
No, because they're not in the same. They're not in the competing conferences anymore, so they don't have the big. So now it's just OU, Texas OU is still the big.
She
rivalry.
does make a beautiful zombie, though, doesn't she?
Yeah, she's fabulous.
And she's a very good piano player for a zombie. I was really impressed with her piano skills. It's like that thing, Doctor, will I be able to play the piano after my hand is fixed? And then he's like, yeah, sure, there's no reason why not. And then they're like, well, that's great because I never could before. It's like being a zombie apparently makes you a brilliant pianist if you're her.
I'm going to presume
that she knew how to play before.
That she played Franz Liszt before, and for whatever reason, Bella's zombie maker stuff. Because what happens? Just so we know, Madge Bellamy, the beautiful that we talked about. Basically, Beaumont, the local rich guy who is not Bela Lugosi, can't get her. So he has asked Bela Lugosi he goes, I would like somehow or another to have her, quote unquote, for a month. So she falls in love with me. And Lugosi, who is no dummy, says, that will not work. However, we can kill her for you and turn her into a zombie. And, and so that's what they decide to do instead. And
there's a thing I do a lot, and I can do that. Is that fine? Because I can handle that.
I can't make a girl fall in love with you.
Yeah, he's like, that part I don't really do. But, if you want a zombie, I am the guy for that. Like, just letting you know, in case you didn't know that someone named Murder Legendary is, your man for zombification, I'm just going to tell you right out. Like, but love, why? Plus, he's probably the kind of villain who's like, love? That's stupid. Like, why would you want that? She can be a zombie. You can have tons of zombies.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
well, that's the
fine.
thing. I mean, that's
I guess I'll do this.
I've gotten into learning about narcissism, and I mean that is the ultimate narcissist, and it's somebody who's like, no, all humans exist only to become my slaves, and there's no emotion about it. He's completely cold. He has no heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like Tony points
that's
out,
what makes him a great,
Yeah.
Even if he is a little bit single-minded, that's what makes him this, Drew we were talking about this on Facebook, it makes him an unironic villain. He's not quite the, twirl your mustache, ha ha ha. But again, he is a narcissist. He's taken over he runs the show in this area, at least.
Yeah.
Maybe there's another magician. That would be another one. That would be awesome. So two rival, in amongst all this stuff, two rival witch doctors, hey, I'll take the north, you take the south, and then they decide, hey, I want more of your area. That would make an awesome movie too.
Like Dr.
Why don't we make these
in that one movie?
Yeah. That would be amazing. But yeah,
and of course the other witch doctor would be Boris Karloff.
Of course.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
we've just created a better sequel for this than the actual sequel, by the way.
Yeah,
that's so.
But that would be amazing. But yeah, I mean, I love his look. Here's all the things I do, and I do it. Just give me some cash. He's got all the zombies he needs, and don't mess with me either, because as he finds out.
I don't understand why Beaumont doesn't expect him to double-cross him. His name is Murder.
Yeah.
Well, also, it's I don't see why anybody trusts a villain. But B, he's kind of counting on we have a pact, that he's going to adhere to that,
Yeah.
there's a certain
I think
in gentleman areas, like, oh well, you know, we had this thing. I paid you for
but
this.
I think Jason's point that he's not double crosser legendary is a good one, because just because someone is known for murdering people doesn't mean they're known for also they might be known for literally backstabbing, but that doesn't mean they're known for figuratively backstabbing.
Yeah, not for welching on a deal. Yeah, I mean, I think Beaumont.
Well, okay, Jason. Let's play what would you do? So you're Beaumont. You go to see this guy, and he looks like Satan. Would you trust him?
Well, this is
I think you got to back up, Drew. I think you got to back up to the first question, which is, do you trust anybody you've just met? And some people trust everybody, and some people trust no one.
I think Beaumont's pretty stupid, honestly. Beaumont, who runs this place, he's come back from. They make it clear, by the way, and you miss it if you're not watching too carefully, because it's a fast movie. But the way these people have met, this young honeymooning couple coming to Haiti. They're not even
honeymooning. He marries them on the island. That's how he meets the preacher.
This young betrothed couple met Beaumont, the rich guy who runs this plantation. They met him on the ship on the way to. So that means Beaumont, who runs this plantation, he's even been gone for a while. He's probably, honestly, been like partying in the United States or whatever. And he's come. By the way, here's where your Act One from a modern-sized feature would come from, is they meet this guy on the ship, and he insinuates themselves into his life. But the thing is, he's in love with the girl, but he's not very smart. He is way out of his league when dealing with Bela Lugosi, who, like Tony points out, has all the angles covered.
He has more angles than his beard.
Nice. But again, it goes back to, like, any time, like, you can read everything, you can watch horror movies, you can go back to Faust, and yet there's still people like, okay, so the devil. This time, I'm pretty sure the devil's on the up and up. Like, I know he's called the Prince of Lies. I know, like, there's that whole he's evil and he runs hell. But this time, I think I got him. I think I got one over on him. Like,
I think
how many times? And I'm like, no, he's the freaking devil.
Well, now there is hey, you're not giving credit. There is, the devil went down to Georgia, where the devil is defeated. So it happens occasionally.
Yes, but he didn't come up and go, hey, the devil kind of found out. It was like a contest, as opposed to like, I'm gonna, and there's also devil and Daniel Webster, of course. But in general,
Hey,
like,
look,
it seems like a bad idea.
Johnny in that song, though, was supernaturally talented, and the devil had no choice but to know that he'd been beat, which is not normally the case.
But in general, it just seems like a bad idea. Like,
all I know is Mama Edwards didn't raise no fool, so I would never trust somebody in murder.
Yes.
Right. Any more than I would trust
this couple is,
I'm a worm, honestly. But, Yes. All right. So, so they slip Madeline and Mickey, and then Murder Legendary brings his crew of zombies to hustle out Madeline's corpse out of her grave, which is very quickly discovered by, because this movie moves fast, very quickly discovered by her beloved, who then, of course, gets...
Well, he's having a drinking binge, and he either hallucinates, or maybe she is actually calling to him. Who knows that she is calling to him, and he comes running to her grave and finds it open. And
boy, this is a sequence you would never see in a modern film, ever, 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 where he's drinking in a bar, and the bar is indicated by him sitting at a table by himself with silhouettes of other people cast on the wall behind him.
That goes back, I think, to this guy hated talkies. I mean, that's a huge, silent film kind of trope in the way it's shot. It's a really great scene, and I like how he juxtaposed. Man, why am I so bad at talking today? Juxtaposes her silhouette, her image onto the silhouettes. Yeah. oh man, there's just so many great bits in that. Like, I really, really dug that scene. I mean, it's a little over dramatic, it's a little over the top, but like, in general, it is such classic, like, silent film.
Well, almost like so much in this movie almost looks like something from German and impressionist. Expressionist. It's the use of shadow, the way the way the shots are set up. Like it doesn't take place in our world.
Right. It's not intended to be treated as realistic. There's nothing realistic about that. It'd be absurd for somebody to watch this and go, "Oh boy, I guess they just didn't have the money to the bar."
It's funny. I'm trying to like hammer down the style, and I think in just talking about the scene, I get it. This movie exists in like sort of a weird place in between Universal horror and like Dr. Caligari and Nosferatu. This is the world in between those two worlds.
Exactly.
I think that's right. I think that's a really, really good, really astute observation. Yeah, it's very, especially here. Whereas in other times, there's a very naturalistic look about it. The workers working in the sugar mill seem to be in a real world. And the workers are all zombies, by the way. But still, that thing, the sets.
The sound, the use of sound right there again, though, is great because there's that. It's so creepy.
Yeah. Right. Well, especially since one of the zombies trips and falls into the thresher, and they just sort of they just keep making sugar. This is where your sugar comes from. It's really hard for me to imagine this is not a social message. Maybe I'm wrong. But this is where your sugar comes from.
Well, I mean, there's literally, not just sugar, but like there's literally, things they call blood diamonds, the blood. I mean, there are plenty of things where people are suffering and dying to bring you your product cheap or whatever.
Right. Yeah, well, in today's world, we've got, kids in sweatshops making iPods. Here you've got sugar, yes, but it's being built on the backs of slave labor, people who don't have lives, who are zombies, and
in this case, they literally don't have lives.
Yes, and I think that's the idea. I mean, it just seems impossible that that's not the case. Somebody's got that in mind. It's not possible you can see that much symbolism and not assume that it's really there. Maybe I mean, truly, maybe I'm wrong, but it just seems like it's all over the place. Anyway, the finale comes very quickly, which is this. Neil gets with the missionary who says, I think that these zombies are actually a trick on the part of Murder Legendary, and we can bring a zombie back because they're not really dead. Drew's point, it's hard to say. The movie's a little ambiguous, and it's also possible that it depends on how long you've been a zombie. But clearly Madeline is just such a zombie that you can bring her back. That it's possible to wake her up. All they have to do is wrest her from Murder's fantastic seaside castle where he's keeping her, and where apparently Beaumont has moved in right before he got poisoned. And by the way, this I love the castle. I love the whole. I mean, I know it's art. I know it doesn't really exist, but I love the castle and the beach and the long trek to get up there. This is all looking really good.
Well, and apparently a lot of these sets are from previous.
Yeah. That was what Drew was saying. Was that we're looking at Dracula stuff and Frankenstein stuff. I don't know where this balcony is that she comes and stands on. What movie that's from, but it's great. I mean, it's a beautiful balcony.
Well, like I said, because of that, it really does look at times I know a lot of people who mistakenly think this is a Universal horror film, and it is easy to see why. And it's structured very much like Dracula and Frankenstein. I actually think that this movie cuts along a lot better than the Todd Browning Dracula, which might almost be blasphemous to say to some people.
No, you're right. That movie bogs down. We haven't done Universal horror on this show yet, which is sort of bizarre considering that
Oh, we've done a few. We did Dracula's Daughter. We've done the Wolfman and the Invisible Man. So we've done a few.
That's true. That's true. But doesn't it seem strange to you that we haven't hit on like the big two? That we haven't done Frankenstein?
Oh, I mean, hey, you mark that on the calendar. I'm there.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Yeah.
Like, you're not going to have to sell me on that retrospective. Like,
we may well hit number 200 this year, by the way, because we're probably around 175 or so movies. So we got to be thinking about something cool to do.
I still say we do the Silence of the Lambs, but that's my.
Well, I'm sure that Anyway, there's we've also got lots of requests on the Facebook page. All right, but anyway, the balcony, hanging balcony from Hunchback of Notre Dame. That's where it comes from. So the sets, the great halls from Dracula, the pillars and hanging balcony from the Hunchback of Notre Dame, the dark corridors from Frankenstein, of course, and the chairs, oddly enough, from The Cat and the Canary. And so this is a hell of a. This set is,
It's a Frankenstein's monster of movies.
Wow. Yes, indeed. That's right. I've never heard anybody make that observation, but it's totally true. So anyway, the good guys get there, and even Beaumont and Beaumont's servant is killed first by the zombies because Lugosi has.
And this sequence to me, where with the zombies sort of swarming over people, is the most where you start to see the DNA of this movie that would go through into Night of the Living Dead.
Yes. Yeah. How the difference is they're being controlled by somebody else who says, get that guy. But once he says sick him, they sick him by just surrounding him and, absolutely.
Well, they tossed him off a waterfall, but I mean, it is, it is, easy to think that maybe, a young Romero saw this as like, well, what would be even scarier is if they ripped him apart and ate him.
Yeah, right.
Because a mob of angry people is frightening, and I do think that's one of the reasons why zombie movies have endured, is the idea of this mass coming at you, because they're, even a very, very strong person would have a very hard time enduring, like, just a group of people with, like, literally no will other than to murder you.
Yeah, no, you're right. What triggers the end is when Neil shows up, Bela Lugosi orders the zombie Madeline to kill Neil, and that's what caused her to snap out of it. In the tradition of lots and lots of people snapping out of spells, being faced with combating their loved one snaps you out of it, she snaps out of it, and then that sort of sets off the final fight on the balcony.
Beaumont manages to get enough will to attack Bela Lugosi.
Yes. Beaumont attacks Bela Lugosi, sends him over the cliff. The rest of the zombies, once Neil manages to avoid being thrown off himself, because he comes really close, but, with a little bit of help from the minister who shows up, all the rest of the zombies, literally undirected once Bela Lugosi is no longer around, they just sort of stumble off the cliff.
Like lemmings.
Like lemmings, yes, indeed. They stumble like one after another. The funny thing is, when you think about it, the Romero zombies are so stupid that if pointed in the right direction, they would probably walk off a cliff too. I mean, I have no doubt.
Definitely.
Yeah, they simply go because they're just not that. You remember the ones in Dawn of the Dead crawling all over, and some of them going up the.
I don't know though, man. Then you got in Day of the Dead, you got Bub, who's pretty bright for a zombie.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. That's totally true. Bub picks up the razor. Remember that? And looks at the razor like.
Oh, never mind that. Bub learns how to shoot.
Drew, the reason I was laughing is because I was thinking about that "Pretty Fly for a White Guy" song.
Yeah.
And I was thinking pretty smart for a zombie.
That's true.
Well, I'm telling you, Bub became king of the zombies because he knows how they shoot a gun. So when all those humans start shooting at them, he can shoot back.
Yeah. You're totally right. That's a darn good point. So, yeah, I'm glad you brought back also that notion of the zombie DNA here, because this retrospective is called Zombie Origins. So it's very important to mark these things as we pass them and go, we will see this again. You know, we see the inkling of swarming here. We see the lemming-like behavior. And that's, by the way, is the end, because once the zombies go over the side, what we're left with is the young lovers, now happily married. The minister is still alive, still looking for a pipe to smoke his pipe with. I mean, for a match to smoke his pipe with, and they're having a good time because now they're...
He's a very half-assed Van Helsing, I have to say.
Yeah.
He's no Edward Sloan.
No, I mean, well, it's funny. He's played by this guy named Cawthorn, who is from the United States, but was well known for doing a crazy German accent. And in this movie, he's doing 2-3 accents at various points in the film. I mean, he's kind of Irish sometimes, and he's kind of German sometimes. You know, because at times he sounds like that German duck in the old Walt Disney cartoons who was explaining things to you, and you know, other times he sounds like...
Well, I think it's meant to sound like Sigmund Freud, isn't he?
Yeah, something like that. You know, and at other times he's like the Irish cop walking a beat in a Bowery play. It's all absurd. I mean, he's just an American actor, and you know, this is what he brought today, and that's...
I think he's phoning it in a little bit. That's all right.
Yes. So, anyway, that's White Zombie. I'm curious as to why Rob Zombie. It's really interesting to me that this is the movie that he chose to take his name from.
What I mean,
it's classic.
That's an awesome name.
Yeah, it's an awesome name, and it's also, I mean, it's a classic, and it is, you know, zombie origins. It's like, this is where it began, you know.
I have no doubt in my mind that Rob Zombie's probably a big fan of this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we can be critical of his movies, but there is not 1 second do I not doubt that Rob Zombie is not a real gigantic horror movie nerd, because the brief time I got to talk to him when I met him, all he did was talk about horror movies. And he seems to know, he didn't seem like a poser. He seemed like he legitimately knew what he's talking about. Yeah. So,
absolutely. Oh, no, I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve to name his band White Zombie. You're totally right. It's an awesome film. It has that hint of obscurity that you kind of want for like a nice in-joke that everybody can sort of enjoy with one another, you know. Go, yeah, like, you know, White Zombie, like that 1930s film that wasn't quite universal and so forth. Yeah. No, it's you're right. It's perfect. Yeah, he's the real...
The real question is why he didn't take the name Murder Legendary.
Oh, yeah. That is true.
Which sounds way cooler than being named Rob.
Yeah.
Well, maybe his name was already Rob, and he just...
Actually, I have no idea. I should look that up, but I have not.
Maybe he was waiting. He's like, okay, you know, I got to save that for my firstborn.
You know what? I bet you're right. I'm telling you, if I ever became a shock rocker, I would change my name to Murder Legendary in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Murder Legendary 5.
Okay. So Rob, yes, I just looked it up. Rob Zombie was born Robert Bartlett Cummings. So he's Rob already. He wasn't going to change Rob.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But Murder Legendary 5s, you might as well. Yeah.
Well, Drew, you should definitely do that. Okay, so we should get our final thoughts on this film. And I think we started with Drew. We started with Drew. So, Drew... Oh, God, I feel like we could keep discussing this for a long time, but I don't advise. There's no reason to do a 2-hour episode on a 1-hour film. Well, you could, I suppose. But give me your final thoughts on White Zombie.
I am just excited that we're doing this retrospective, and I love this movie. I'm glad everybody else liked it, because I wasn't sure how this was going to go over. I always, anytime we do one of these horror movies that are of this time period, that are very near and dear to my heart, I always wonder how they're going to play, because sometimes they don't always go for people who are used to more modern films. So I'm glad that this actually hit all the right marks for everybody, because I love this movie. I could watch it again when we're done with this podcast. In fact, I may do that. It's a beautiful looking film. I don't think we touch enough on how great this movie looks. Like it's just so thorough in its otherworldliness. Like my trusty DVD copy that I bought at the dollar store that I've had for a while now says an eerie classic on the front, and I think that is the best way to describe this movie. It's very eerie, and if you're looking for something that hits that, that kind of vibe, this is a good movie to throw on. I'm really glad that we're going to be doing this set. I think this is a really cool idea, and I'm just stoked. I love all the movies that we're going to be discussing over the next few weeks, and I love this one.
Before we move on, you mentioned the presentation, and I should mention the version I saw is gorgeous, of course, but it is definitely, it's a little washed out. There's a crackle and pop to the soundtrack all the time. Tony, you mentioned that there's a new refurbished version.
Yeah, I'm not sure how.
I wonder.
I'm not sure how new it is, but I didn't notice the version that I watched was not. There's also listed a restored version, and I think they restored it onto, if I remember correctly, Blu-ray as well.
Yeah, there's a Blu-ray. Although I know a lot of people don't care for it.
There's a restored one, and there's a restored copy on Amazon Prime as well. So, like, digitally, you can watch the restored one digitally as well. I didn't have time to rent both, even though it's an hour, like, you know how it is. But I was hoping somebody had rented the restored one so we could compare and contrast.
I'm curious if it still has the crackle and pop, or if they've eliminated that somehow.
Maybe it's the nostalgia goggles strapped to my head about this, but like, I'm kind of glad that the one that I have looks virtually identical to the VHS copy that I saw when I was first a kid, and I like all the crackles and pops on this. I said this to Jason before we started recording. It reminds me of that quality that when you put on a really old blues album on vinyl, it's got that same sort of creakiness to it, and this is the version that I fell in love with when I was a kid. So I don't know that I would want it to ever be any different. And I guess that is kind of nostalgia talking, but I don't care.
Well, I mean, think of like the Three Stooges or Our Gang or any of those things. If you watch them, and they do the insert shots and cutaway, and there's always that pop, and there's the pops and crackles on the soundtrack all the time. It would be weird to issue a restored Three Stooges that got rid of all the impurities in the sound. I mean, it would seem bizarre. So I hear where you're coming from. But so I'm curious though. I'm curious. Maybe somebody on the Facebook page can let us know what the restoration amounts to. It'd be nice to see it with a lot of blacker blacks, that's for sure. But there's something dreamy about the soft black and whites here. Julia, what are your final thoughts?
I don't know that we talked too much. Well, I guess we talked a little bit about stylistically the fact that it pulled from the different films or whatever. But I think there is something that I don't think we mentioned really, the direction in terms of how different shots are made, and like how people, like at one point I think they're at a graveyard and suddenly you just see this group of zombies kind of off in the distance, and it's really creepy.
Yeah.
And I loved that stuff. I loved the way that they just used, just the images. I don't know, it was very simple. It didn't nothing felt cluttered, nothing felt like they were trying too hard. It was just I think that's one of my favorite kinds of horror movies is that I like the spooky movies. I don't like gore, that I've said that a million times. I don't like I do like suspense thrillers, but that's a different genre. But I love spooky movies. Sorry?
No, it's not.
We've talked about this one before. Drew
Yeah.
believes suspense thrillers are still just horror movies.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it's a different genre of horror movie.
Correct.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But the spooky, this black and white spooky, where you just kind of have, same for ghost films as well, where you just kind of have a suggestion of supernatural and a suggestion of horror, and it's not thrown in your face. I really like that. So I enjoyed it, and I appreciate you bringing it to our attention, Drew.
Well, thank you.
Tony, final thoughts on White Zombie?
Yeah, I do need to check out the restored version. I really like the movie a lot. I love the atmosphere. Great villain. Like I said before, I do kind of wish that I'd like to see, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be a direct remake, but I would like to see something take a less breezy tone in a way and really kind of dive into some of these things, because you've got such great elements to it. I also think, going back to something I was thinking about when Drew was giving his final thoughts, and, we're talking about people who, this is the beginning of zombie movies, and people's influences. And again, I like to go back to, if we all too often see people go, I like, and now that it's so far back, you could see somebody being influenced by Scream, for example, and not going past that, or somebody who sees Halloween. But if you really want to conjure up and go back in the same way that learning art history helps you be a better artist, like when you say, like, oh, not everybody likes his 30s thing or whatever, and you're totally right. But if somebody really wanted to make a movie that is influenced by, if you want to make a Carpenter-esque movie, do better. Like, to me, it seems like people really do owe it to themselves to do better than that. Like, watch the movies Carpenter watched. Watch the movie that the people he watched. Like, that's the way you're going to create something that's kind of fresh. It's kind of weird to say fresh, because that you're influenced by.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. Like,
past,
don't bring all don't have all the same, like, bring in some different flavors, bring in some different influences.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think that will make, when people go, oh, it's just another one of these movies, like, and somebody goes, oh, I'm really influenced by, like, this. And you go, or let's say somebody's influenced by Tarantino, and you go, well, that's cool, but Tarantino, like, was influenced and, homage, ripped off, whatever you want to call it. He has a huge, whether you like his movies or not, I don't care. He has a huge film knowledge that he draws from. And, whether or not you like what he does with that film knowledge, that's beside the point. But it's like a photocopy of a photocopy. So when you say, oh, it's like, I don't think people, a lot of people may not like this and stuff, I'm hoping, and I know that's, maybe a pipe dream, but if you're a true horror fan and you like this stuff and you want to make horror movies, like, I'm hoping that people do just this and watch something from the 30s, watch all kinds of silent film as well. Like, the bigger your knowledge is, like, it drives me crazy when people are like, oh, I don't really watch black and white or whatever. And you're just like, but you're missing all this stuff, and you're missing a language, that, you should expose yourself to. And that's always the thing that strikes me. But I'm really, like, it's been a long time since I've seen this movie, so I'm really happy that we did it and that we're doing the retrospective that we're doing.
Tony, thank you for that really, really inspiring talk, because I think you're totally, totally right. And, I've thought similar thoughts before, but I think the way you said it really inspires me. Go back, look at as many texts as you can look at, as old as you can get, as new as you can get, everything. Find different things to spin your own work off of, so that you're not spinning off of literally the same thing everybody else is spinning off of.
Well, and it's interesting how I'm thinking. The thought I had, Jason, when you were just talking, is how kids are taught, if they're taught well, they're taught when they're writing to use primary sources as much as possible.
Yeah.
Because if you're looking at Wikipedia or you're looking at whatever book you got in the library, they're quoting another source, or just quoting another source. But if you can go to the source, the original source, then you can actually, make your own interpretation and do your own thing. So I thought that's kind of the thought I had about what you were saying. Yeah.
So smart. I mean, that's really wise, and I appreciate that, Tony. I had not actually seen this film before. I had owned it, and for some reason, when I popped it in, I think many, many years ago, like 20 years ago, I was, there was all the crackling, and I just didn't even bother finishing it. I don't know why. It's sort of strange because I watch an awful lot of stuff. So this was my first time watching it, and I was really astonished. It's of a piece with next week's movie, I think, which is probably my favorite of these voodoo zombie movies, which is I Walked with a Zombie. But this is gorgeous, and I love this world. It makes me want to explore this world of the plantations of the West Indies more, and I'm just really honored to get to talk about it. It's a lot of fun. So that's it. We should do endorsements, and then we will let people anticipate next week. So, Mr. Drew, do you have anything to share with us this week?
Yeah, well, fast forward to the 21st century. Last week I caught The Hallow, which is an Irish horror film, which is sort of best described as Irish folklore by way of David Cronenberg's body horror. And it is also extremely atmospheric. It is obviously much more grotesque than this film, but there is a certain commonality. I think if you like vintage horror films, you probably would like The Hallow a lot. I was really impressed with it. It's got some great creature effects in it. Both the digital effects and the practical effects are very impressive, and it's got an ecological bent as well for those who are environmentally and politically minded. And again, it's dealing with stuff that's not really, Irish folklore has barely been touched on in horror films. So it's kind of neat to get a fresh bit of mythology for to be played with in the horror universe. I hope actually this inspires other filmmakers to sort of dig into this barely tapped mythology. We can do more stuff with it than the Leprechaun franchise. We can actually make stuff that is legitimately creepy. It's on Netflix, so if you have Netflix, you can check it out. Don't confuse it with The Hollow, which is another one. Almost the exact same name, and the posters look almost identical. So I actually started watching The Hollow for about 10 minutes until I realized I was watching the wrong movie. They are the look for The Hallow. That's with an A, and again, totally worth checking out.
All right. Excellent. Julia, do you have anything to endorse this week?
Well, I think I already endorsed 11/22/63, and we did finish watching that, and it is truly wonderful. I think I've endorsed Lucifer just as being a fun show, so that's sort of where I am right now with sticking with those because I haven't gotten anything new yet, so I'll think of it next time.
Tony, what are you watching or reading?
So I saw Midnight Special, which was fantastic. The soundtrack is great, and it also reminded me, it's probably closest to X-Files. All of the stuff that we liked about X-Files that we haven't gotten since maybe the first movie, and certainly not since the last few seasons, and I really didn't like the last season of this latest season of X-Files. I disliked it a ton. And so seeing this, I'm just like, man, that's everything I liked. It's great. It's not full of exposition. Filmed well. I really, if you get a chance to see Midnight Special, you really should check it out. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Like I said, the soundtrack is fantastic. It's just a really well put together movie. great actors. Like, yeah, there's just so much cool stuff. It's probably not for everyone. For the same reasons that I like it, it's probably not for everyone. I had a friend who felt that it was a little bit too sterile for him, or he didn't get some of the emotional bond, but I think it really worked. There's lots of great bits living in the South where I lived, in Mississippi especially, when I lived there. Like, I recognize there's a kind of Pentecostal slash like cult kind of thing in it that in everyone there, they definitely did their research. Like, all of it looked authentic. These people living in this compound and stuff like that. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. And sight unseen, so maybe, I'll regret this, but I'm kind of stoked because Scream Factory, Shout Factory is doing what appears to be the definitive version of Return of the Living Dead. And with the restored voices of some of the zombies, I think it's got the Burn the Flame. There was one song, somebody was telling me there was one song we couldn't get.
They cut the damned Deadbeat Dance. They cut most of that out. The one on the DVD, because like I may have to get that because it always bummed me out that they cut out a lot of the soundtrack. That's probably my favorite soundtrack of any 80s horror film.
Yeah. So it is missing one song?
At least one that I can think of.
Yeah, but what they were able to, how much they were able to restore, unless you have a VHS of it, we haven't gotten that in forever. So I'm pretty stoked about that. We'll see. A friend of mine said that, they've been sketchy on some things, but like my Nightbreed Blu-ray and several other things have been pretty cool. So hopefully it'll be great. But I'm really psyched about that. So unfortunately the Super Duper Collector's Edition sold out, and I was too stupid. I didn't buy it immediately, but I'll make do. The new restored version should be great, though.
And we should be sure, and everything that we've endorsed, we should put links to it on the Facebook page so people can find it.
Yeah,
my endorsement actually is log rolling. There's a thing called the Humble Bundle, which is where you go to humblebundle.com and you can purchase bundles of games or ebooks or whatever for you name your own price, and you can, like, if you pay $15, you can get like up to 18 of these ebooks. If you pay a certain amount, you get some. But right now, Humble Bundle is doing a bundle that includes a book of mine, The Iron Thane, in a brand new, refurbished director's cut version that I've updated, and it's included in the Humble Bundle, which also supports a couple of charities, including the Challenger Center for Space Science Education. So that's what.
So you can. The cool thing about Humble Bundle is you can choose to pay X amount, or you can pay much more. Like, there's a minimum,
right. And
then a lot of times they'll also have, if you pay more, you get more stuff. And then you can also dial in how much you want to just pay to the people and how much you want to pay to charity. And you get to choose, like, it's like a little sliders, and like, hey, I want it all to go to Challenger. I don't like that. I want Jason, or, the people in the thing to have all the money. Whatever. It's kind of not what it's for, because it's really more for charity. But you can choose, and I think that's really cool. I bought games that way. Yeah. Clockworks was supposed to be in one at one point, and then it just fell through, and I was really sad because I would have liked to be part of a particular bundle.
It's going on for another week. 8 more days you have to go and check out the Humble Bundle, and you can check out my book, The Iron Thane, my long-awaited sequel to Shakespeare's Macbeth. So that's my endorsement of the week. Completely self-serving, but I absolutely want people to check it out. Okay, thank you very much. It has been so fun talking about White Zombie. This is going to be a heck of a retrospective, because there's some beautiful stuff here that's going to be very inspiring for all of us as writers as much as movie lovers. Thank you very much. I hope you guys have a fantastic week. We will post all of our endorsements on the Facebook page.
You know, I forgot one other thing that I feel like I would be, for those who listen to the podcast who also follow my comic, I name dropped the directors in the magic spell that is used to create Halloween Man. Way. I can't believe I forgot to mention this. I name dropped the director of this movie and Bela Lugosi because of this film. Jeez, I can't believe I forgot. I went through this whole episode and forgot that until like the last 5 seconds.
What did you call him?
What do you mean? What did I call him? Halperin.
Halperin.
Yeah.
So he was called Dr. Halperin? Man,
No. I don't have a character. His name. I use the names. Like I'll send you the page. I'll send you the page, and it'll make sense. I'll post the page to the Facebook group. How about that?
Oh, that's great. No, that sounds fantastic. Be sure and include a link to where you can get it on Comicsology if you can.
Oh, of course.
All right, Phil. Have a fantastic week, and I will talk to you guys soon. Thanks, everybody.
Take care. Good night.
Later.
Night.